Hello, everybody. Welcome to our festival lounge. This is the first time we've been in this space. We feel very, very lucky to be here. I'm Ann Lai. I'm the executive director of SFFILM. SFFILM presents the San Francisco International Film Festival. We're so excited to see you here. This is our first talk in the space for the festival this year. We are really thrilled to have writer-director Sean Wang in the house with us. His film, this is... and some of his team, hi Josh Peters, whose debut feature film, Dìdi, was part of opening night last night. I don't know if anyone else was anyone here able to see the film yet? Yay. No spoilers, then we won't ruin it. But as many of you may know, Sean has had a whirlwind year so far. The world premiere of Dìdi that happened at Sundance in January. It won the Audience Award for Narrative Feature. It secured distribution with Focus Features. Thank you to Focus for letting us have the film at our festival this year. And that week he also received an Academy Award nomination for his short documentary film Nai Nai Wài Pó. So it was a busy week, and a good one. And we also all know that films have a moment, but they take so long to get there. So we're going to take the next hour to be in conversation with Sean, hear a little bit about process and journey of making films and getting to this point in his career. And we'll also have some time for questions from the audience as well. We have a very special guest to moderate this conversation. Reinaldo Marcus Green, similar to Sean. He was also a first-time feature writer-director once. He was also supported by SFFILM. We were very lucky to support him with a Rainin grant when he was developing his first feature, Monsters and Men, which was just, yay! I would agree. He most recently directed and wrote Paramount's Bob Marley, One Love. Starring Keith Benadire, who I think is really wonderful, amazing. He also directed the film King Richard about the Williams sister and their family father. And has been nominated for a lot of things. So I'm going to get out of the way and let these two gentlemen talk about their work and musings and let us in a little bit on the minds of their visions. But please welcome to the front, Sean Wang and Ray Milstein.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Ann, SFFILM. I'm sure Sean feels the same. There's no way we're here without your support, support of the city, what it means to be a first-time filmmaker. That, as you're putting it together to get those early notches under the belt is just amazing. But yeah, we're here to talk about Sean, because this guy is unbelievable talent. If you haven't seen the film, you must see it. I saw it last night with a full crowd, and it's a testament to how special Sean is. Getting a nomination for a short film to an Academy Award is one thing, but to then take what he learned and make that into a feature film that's so touching and so heartfelt and so pure and authentic. I wrote down all these adjectives to describe you and your work, but obviously for the audience, I'd love to just kind of bring it back a little bit, even beyond the filmmaking. Like, what drove you to this? Why do you do what you do? Can you support yourself doing this?
First of all, thank you so much for doing this, Ray. When Ann said you were moderating this, I was like, oh my God, so cool. And I mean, this is almost going to be like a live therapy session almost, because it's been a crazy few months, and we had our hometown premiere of our movie that is such a love letter to the Bay Area, and I think that day, our premiere day yesterday, getting to show the movie in the Bay Area to so many of the people who we got to make it with, that was sort of like the dream, right, for a movie like this. And so I'm still kind of floating a little bit on cloud nine, but it made me think about, you know, just the seeds of all of this. And I think for me, how it all started was just, you know, growing up as like a kid in the Bay Area, an Asian kid who grew up in Fremont. I didn't know any other filmmakers. I didn't know that filmmaking or directing was a thing that you could do. And I kind of fell into it more. And I think I grew up at a time, you know, it's kind of similar to the movie, but like when cameras were just a little bit more accessible and like people were filming stuff and putting it on YouTube, not because they wanted to be Spielberg or Scorsese, but they were just like, I'm filming my friend like jumping off a tree. I'm putting it on YouTube, titling it my friend jumping off a tree. And I just had fun filming my friends, putting it in an edit system, putting a little bit of music underneath. I didn't know that was filmmaking until years and years and years later. And it all traced back to skating for me. It was like, I fell in love with skating. It was like something I truly have like such a pure love for. It's never left. I still skate today. And I think that skating just gave me an ethos and it introduced me to cameras and photography, making skate videos, and then really trying to make actual skate videos, failing to do so, but like, you know, watching all these skate videos, discovering Spike Jonze, who was making skate videos, and then seeing that he, who I knew as like a skate guy, was directing, you know, Where the Wild Things Are. That was my introduction to Spike as like a feature filmmaker, and then discovering Adaptation and being John Malkovich, all these music videos, and then being like, wait, you can do more than one thing? Like, and then I didn't even realize I put myself in a box. And that's when I was like, okay, what is this? I just want to try making stuff. Because I was just like, I want to make skate videos, because that seems like something I can do. And he had made a skate video that was like really emotional. And I was like, what? Like, this is weird. Like, why am I crying watching like a skate video? But it's because it's Spike. And that was the seed of everything. That I was just like, I don't know what this is, but I could do this for 24 hours a day and not get bored. And I get a buzz, you know? And that's kind of what led me to right now in a way. Yeah.
And this was your first feature that you wrote?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like you didn't write one and then have one like on a hard drive that just didn't go well?
Actually, I wrote a feature film almost as like just a challenge. It was maybe I'll make it one day. I hope I get to make it one day. I still love the idea. But this was probably in end of 2016 or early 2017, end of 2017. I was working at this team at Google called Creative Lab at the time. I worked this 1-year residency, and it was like a really great opportunity. I thought I was going to be there for a year, and that's kind of how I incorporated all the tech in the future. But afterwards, I was just kind of like, I don't know what I want to do next. I do want to make a feature one day, and I heard all these stories of, you know, that saying that it takes 7-8 years to be an overnight success, and I was like, man, if I'm going to make a feature, I should start now. And I remember just being like, you know what, before I do the next commercial thing, and let me just sit down every single day, 30 days, I'm gonna spit out a bad first draft of something. And it was this idea I really loved, but as I was writing it, I was like, this is too big, no one's ever gonna let me make this as a first feature. What do I have access to? What is unique to me? And I had shot something in Fremont when I was a student, and it was like our version of trying to do a real thing, and the whole community came together and like supported the movie, and I was like, that, like, you don't get that in LA, you know? Maybe you get that in New York depending, like, you know, where you're from, but it was like, oh, we should make a community movie. We should make something set in Fremont where Fremont's a character. And I really those were the seeds of Dìdi. It was like, okay, well, what do I want to tell? What's something that's personal, but also like, how do we make it a community effort? And so that's really when like I started writing this feature, and I was like, this is what I'm making. I was like, I'm excited about this. This is the first one.
Interesting. Well, take me back a little bit to why Google? Were you just, you know, making ends meet? Like, what was the choice to work at Google? What were you doing right before that? Did you graduate, need a job? Like, just take me through, just kind of walk me through a little bit of the process to say, okay, I can now leave this. I feel safe enough to do that. And I can only speak for myself. Like, I didn't take a traditional path. You know, I went to, you know, I was a teacher, and then I went to Wall Street for a few years, and then I went to film school. And I was 27 when I decided to go to film school. So it was a very non-traditional path, and I'm very curious about your path into that. You know, why Google and all of that.
Well, what made you want to go to film school?
I have a brother that was doing it. I just thought
because you
that'd be
mixed up with your brother, yeah.
Yeah, he was just traveling the world on his art, and I was stuck behind like an Excel spreadsheet. I was like, you know, I don't know. I had a girlfriend at the time. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids, and we broke up. And then I was like, well, what am I doing here? You know, just like existential crisis, or whatever. Maybe at that point, 25. It's like, what am I doing? Quarter life crisis. That's the one. Quarter life crisis. I definitely had one. I was like, if I died today, would I be happy? And the answer was kind of no. You know, and I was like, that's really sad. It's just like a sad existence. And I thought, well, I should try to do something that makes me happy. I should at least try. I just never thought I was good enough at anything. You know, I never thought I was good enough. And so I attempted. I just said, all right, you know what, let me just apply to film school. I'm probably not going to get in. I have to do a short film, and I have to put in an application, and I'm too old. And I like basically talked myself out of it, but somehow mustered up the courage to just put in the application. And then when I got waitlisted. I remember I was like the last kid into my film school, the whole thing. But when I got in, I was like, it was probably just the notification that I was accepted was probably like one of the biggest moments of achievement in my life. Like I didn't go to the best schools, I was not really a great student. None of those things. I wasn't like top of the class at Harvard. You know, that just wasn't me. And it took me a long time to figure it out. And when I finally did, I was like, whoa, like if they believe in me, maybe I can start to believe in myself. So, you know, again, I went chasing my older brother, who's cool and talented and very great at what he does, and he's also a filmmaker, just so we could basically play in the sandbox together. I could do what he's doing. Now I'm like, you know, that's a little friendly competition.
Yeah, what's up?
We'll talk about that one after.
Yeah. No, but I resonate. You know, I wasn't the the smartest kid in my class. I was always like the. My friend said to me when we were growing up in high school, like friend, but he was like, Sean, you're like the smart skater kid and the dumb honors kid. And I was like, it's not a compliment. That's. But like I graduated high school and like I didn't have the best grades. I wasn't. I knew that I was driven by the things that I was driven by, but like. And I knew I was smart, but I just didn't apply myself in high school. I applied myself to the things I love, which is like, I love skating and I love making things, and I smart enough to be in all the honors classes without really trying. And so and then I graduated and I was like, I don't know if I just want to like go to a school just to do it. Like and I think I was kind of, I don't know if it's because of skating, but I was like, why do I need to go to a UC? Like, why do I have to go to a school and have my parents pay all the, like, I don't want, like, if I'm gonna go do this, and like I want to try and really do it, you know, and like try and put 150% effort and see where I could kind of am I capable of kind of doing that. And so that's when I decided to go to community college, and I talked to my parents. I was like, I think I want to be a filmmaker. And they're like, what? You want to make skate videos? I'm like, no, I don't know. I love this thing. I think it's a very pure love, and like, I'll go to community college first. It'll save all money, and I'll prove that like I'm taking this really, really seriously. And so those 2 years of community college, I just grinded, and I was like making wedding videos and anything that would pay, like random commercials for local companies and anything that would pay me. And they were like, oh, you're like starting a little small business making wedding videos. Like I was getting paid like thousands of dollars, which And I was like, okay. And they're like, all right, like you're taking this really seriously. But I was just, reading books about film. I started watching, that's where I saw, my first internet, like 400 Blows. And I was like, oh my God, that's my favorite movie. Then I saw Fruitvale Station and Stand By Me, or Short Term 12. And I was like, oh, what are these feature films that are like small independent films that look like they weren't $200 million blockbusters, but made you feel so like moved. And I was like, oh, maybe there's a path through this side of things. And I remember Googling, like, I was like, okay, what's the budget for Fruitvale Station? And Short Term 12, it's like under $1 million, like movies made for under $1 million. And I just started watching a bunch of movies that were like small, and like Medicine for Melancholy and like George Washington. And I was like, okay, they made these for so little, but they're so amazing, and just like shoebox in production, but not in emotion. And I was like, okay, maybe this is something I can like go this route. And I just remember kind of chasing that, really wanting to go to UCLA because of the in-state tuition. And then I got waitlisted, and I ended up transferring to USC, and it was that DIY of not knowing any filmmaker, doing everything myself, all of a sudden like the most traditional, most studio, most like, what are you, pick your lane and stick to it. And I was like, I don't know, I like directing, I like writing, I like editing, I like sound design, and they're all things that you need to know to make a movie. Like every department informs the other departments. And that was like a very strange transition for me looking back. And then the Google thing kind of came out of nowhere. There was a filmmaker who's from the Bay Area, H.A.G.S, who premiered in 2018, your class. He did Searching, and when he sold the pitch for Searching, they basically had a slot in their one-year residency that opened up, and I essentially took his job. And I was like, I had never lived in New York. This is a long answer, I'm sorry. I had never lived in New York. It felt like such a detour from everything I just spent the last 2 years doing. But I don't know if you guys had seen the early Google commercials, but they were like so emotional and they didn't feel like commercials. And I grew up, being like loving Spike Jonze and like the 90s directors, and they were doing also commercials in like 60s and 90s. I was like, oh, maybe there's an interesting training here, but also like they were paying me a good salary, like out of film school, and I was getting to live in New York for a year. I was like, that doesn't sound like the worst first year out of college. But what ended up happening was there's like that whole Ira Glass thing of like the gap, and like you just have to make things. And it went from being in like a film school environment where you spend like 6 months developing a script, pitching it, and like not really making anything. And then there at Creative Lab, I was making things literally every day. They weren't good, they were getting killed every single day, but my job was literally to make stuff. And by the end of that year, I was like, I can work so fast. I can edit like this. And then I ended up staying in New York for 5 or 6 years, trying to do, because I was like, okay, they're paying me well, they give me the freedom to like write and like work on my small shorts. Yeah.
Well, what I think is so interesting is just the path that filmmakers take to get to where they are, and everyone is so different, and yours is no different than that. You just look much younger than you are, which I'm jealous about. Like I wear all my
Asian jeans.
No, I thought we had it too, but maybe just me. But yeah, man, like it's amazing to see your like meteoric rise. Like I don't know if you feel that or just people telling you that, but it is like it's not common. And even though you've been grinding, so maybe it doesn't feel that way to you because it's like, well, I've been doing this for so long that it's finally your moment. Can you talk a little bit about that? How people talk about you and how you feel about yourself? Because I think those two things are often misconstrued.
Yeah, I mean, it's really weird. It's a hard thing to process. I remember coming out of Sundance this year, and there was an IndieWire article that was like, Sundance 24's biggest breakout filmmaker is also an Oscar nominee. And I was like, that's me? That cannot be me. That is like, what? But, and I think the interesting thing is like, I don't know, like I'm so grateful that it all happened, but the two projects that just happened to be released at the same time that has become that, what you're saying, meteoric rise, they both, the feature took 7 years of developing and thinking like maybe one day someone will let us make it. We shot the short in 2021. I edited it in like the 5 different bedrooms that I was subletting and moving around in over the course of 2 years. That film, both of them were such small movies that no one, if I stopped working on them, nobody would be like, where is it? They had no reason to exist other than that feeling that, I don't know if you had this like when you started out making films, but like I always think back to when I'm 13 or when I started getting that buzz, and it's like, I don't care how we pull this off, like I will spend my own money, I will steal from the school. We're gonna like, you have this idea, you're like, I want to do this. And I think those ideas, both of these films are just like they were so small and contained, and somehow they ended up with a worldwide theatrical distribution plan. The short got nominated for an Oscar. That must have been the cheapest nominated short of all time. We shot it with a crew of like 3 people, and so the fact, like those two worlds, like so indie, so small and personal, all of a sudden like having this giant platform and having it within like months of one another, it just sort of feels like so unexpected. And so I'm kind of like, that's not why we made it, but I'm certainly thrilled that it happened. I hope it makes my 30s a lot easier, and like, but I mean, we talked a little bit about this off screen because like I'm curious, after you made your first movie and like Ray also, Carlos Lopez Estrada produced my movie along with Josh Peters back over there and Valerie Bush. Like how you felt after premiering your first feature, and like, and like how do you make it a sustainable career? I think that's kind of what's top of mind for me right now because, our movie, like I don't think our movie, the model we took was like a sustainable model. We cut it in like 3 months, and because we wanted to try and sprint for the Sundance deadline, but also because like indie movie, like you want to pay everybody, and you can only pay a certain amount, and you don't have the luxury of cutting something in your bedroom all the time for 2 years. And I've been thinking a lot about that, like how do you have a sustainable career making things that you're excited about?
That's a great question. Man, after Sundance, I did not have the same Sundance journey. I didn't have a short Oscar nominated at the same time. I had $300,000 of student debt.
Oh my God.
And I was just thinking, how am I going to make it to February? And this is our January release. And so I'm like, okay, but I'm at Sundance. I'm like here. Like this is, like we made it. It's amazing. I got my son with me, who was like a year and a half at that time.
You were already a parent.
I was a parent, and so I'm just like, okay, finally, like a little bit of breathing room. We're at Sundance, we're premiering my film. I remember, in my head, it was like a standing ovation. I just remember it like that. And then
Where'd you guys premiere?
H.A.G.S.
Wow.
And then the first review was like, stop making movies. And I was like, well, I'm never paying this loan back. No, I literally thought my life was over. Like, not forget like film. I was like, I'm finished as a person. It was bad. I just think the pressure of like being a dad and like reviews and all that stuff, and like what I put on myself, the expectation, because I saw people clapping at the theater, and then a reviewer was like, I hate your movie, and not only do I hate your movie, you should stop it. So like, it was hard. It was like, that was probably the hardest moment I had to go through, but it was probably the most humbling and best moment that happened to me, because after that, other reviews came out, and it leveled the playing field a little bit, and kind of by the end of Sundance, we were a success story. We had told our film similar to you, and and I realized, like, man, not everybody's gonna love your movie. Like, there's gonna be people that hate it, and I didn't make it for some random person to talk about it. I made it for people. And I think I just kept reminding myself every project I took on, like, I'm just making this for people. I'm making this for people. If I stick to that, I'll be able to make really cool stuff. Whatever it is, TV, film, go back and forth between, and not think about the like success of it, because it took me a while to make a little bit of money. It took me a while to even like feel like I could breathe financially. And it didn't happen right away. I was literally like, how am I gonna get to the next month financially? And for me, that path was TV. I went to television because I knew I could get something a little faster. But I was certainly trying to curate. I wasn't just taking anything. I was certainly trying my best to curate a little bit of a path that says, okay, what's my voice as a filmmaker? People ask me all the time, what's your voice? I mean, I don't, you probably answer that better than me, but I think we're still discovering what that is, and you're constantly growing and evolving. But that voice is, I guess, the way I describe it is my point of view. Like, everybody, if you gave a camera, would give us a different movie here, and it's just my version of the movie, and I think about my point of view or that way. But yeah, the sustainability part is, I think it comes down to like the choices you make, and how not to fall victim or trapped to the easy money. You know, I grew up, I don't want to use the word poor because there were a lot less fortunate people, but we didn't have money. And so like peanut butter and tuna fish, I still eat it. Like that's normal to me. Like that's not a bad meal, that's a good meal. And so because I could live on tuna fish and peanut butter, like just because people are dancing, you know, you want to eat caviar, like I'm okay. I'm okay right now. Like I want to eat that stuff, but not right now. What I need to do is do what you're doing, which is focus on personal stories that have a universality to them, something that I can maybe get out to the world. And I think that's what you've done so brilliantly in your film, is to take such an intimate story and make it universal. I don't know anybody that could watch a movie and say, it doesn't matter where you're from, how do you not relate to this group of kids or what it was like growing up at that period of time. You captured that in like a bottle. And that's a special trait. And I think that's the ticket to financial stability is that singular voice. It's not necessarily what goes in your pocket. There's lots of different ways to make money. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that helps you as you're starving for your next meal. But like,
no, I mean, it's all, you know, it's definitely like, it's weird when you're in this place of like, I am curious when you say like you make films for people. Like one thing that I started doing, maybe like the first thing I made that got any sort of attention, that was like my first, I felt like foot in the door, was this film that I shot during that first year living in New York City. It was like a 5-minute montage of the city, and my mom's voicemails chronicled underneath it. Again, shot for like $0, and it was the first thing I was like, oh, this is my voice. It's nothing that they would have encouraged you to make in a film school setting, but I was like, I don't know what this is, I like it. I didn't apply to any festivals, I put it on the internet, and then it got a staff pick, which is where I saw, I think, Stop was staff picked, right? Yeah. And that was the first thing that cracked any sort of door open for me. And I remember being at a screening, and someone was like, it was basically a short film. It was like the 2016 to 2017 year in American history, and so like Trump was kind of in the texture of it. And my mom just is very poetic when the way she leaves her voicemails. But I remember someone said to it at a screening, and she was like, I feel like you really captured what it was like being an immigrant, an Asian American immigrant in Trump's America. What statement were you trying to make about identity? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, my mom speaks Chinese, I'm Asian. But I realized like, oh, you can take these really small local stories and like people are going to interpret them and put the like however they want. And I remember like even when I was working at Google and when I was trying to make stuff that I wanted a lot of people to like, I ended up making stuff for nobody. Cause like I was like, I don't really like this, but I think other people will like it, and then other people wouldn't like it, and I was like, oh, my bad. And then I realized like in a way like, oh, if I'm actually very selfish about this, and being like I'm making like even Nai Nai Wài Pó, the short about my grandmas, we had this ethos. I was like, at the end of the day, you know, we try to bring a lot of craft to it, but we're like, at the end of the day, this is a home video. Like this movie is not for anybody except my family, my grandmas, and like they need to love and see an honest portrait of, you know, these two women that they know so intimately. It needs to be honest to that. But I think if it's honest to that, it'll work for everybody. And so when I think about the movies I make now, when I think of like for people, my audience is actually very slim. And when I thought about Dìdi, I was like, this movie, on one hand, it's for my friends. Like my friends need to see themselves in this movie, and if it doesn't feel like an honest portrait of them, it's not gonna work for anybody. And I almost like, I had that thought in my head. I was like, it doesn't, like, this movie is for my friends. That's the audience. Every decision we're making in the editing room, it's for my friends. So I'm curious, like when you say for people, do you approach it that way?
I think it's more submit. I agree with you. When I say for people, I think about my mother, who is truly a general audience member. Like, she watches everything. Tyler Perry, like, those are her favorite movies. She's like, my movies are like homework for her. You know? Oh, it's all right, you know. All right, I can't watch it too late. I'm gonna fall asleep. You know, it's like, so I'm like, okay, how am I gonna keep my mother's attention? You know, she's a theater of one, but she's like the most honest person. No, I didn't like it.
I'm the same way.
But just not good. You know, it's like, oh, it took me 3 years to make it. But that's life, right? Like, and that's the reality of what we do. Like, no one cares how hard it was to make. They just, was it good or bad? So I can tell my friends to go see it. And if I think about it that way, it's like, well, how do I engage my mother? How do I get my mom to want to go to the theater and love what I do? You know, it's not for her, but I definitely need, I think about the movies that I make in a way, would she understand this? And if that's like King Richard, I didn't know anything about tennis. So I'm like, well, my mom doesn't care about tennis. She cares about humanity, she cares about people, she cares about human behavior, and the sport is less important than what is happening. So I think we were able to take what might have been a tennis movie on paper and make it about a family. Make it about something that somebody would care about. So the characters gave it some anchor, at least for me, when I think about, okay, maybe the script that I received wasn't quite doing the thing that was speaking to my mother. You know, speaking to a more niche audience. And I was thinking, okay, well, how do I look at this thing and make it more universal by speaking to a Puerto Rican woman from the Bronx who doesn't care about tennis? And I think that's, when I think about audience, I think about that woman right there.
That's beautiful.
I don't know if it's that beautiful.
Yeah.
It's hard, because you're watching a movie with mom and she's like,
Yeah.
you'll get the next one, honey. Yes, or she just gets real quiet. You want to eat something? You hungry? Okay. So you liked it. So how was watching the movie with your mom?
It was great. I mean, like, my mom is pretty similar but different. You know, she, going back to like just being moved, like she's like, my mom's maybe, she's not like most traditional stereotypical Asian mothers. Like, she wasn't a tiger mom. She's very empathetic and soft and tender and artistic. Like, she is a painter. And I remember, you know, early on when I was making stuff, she'd be like, oh, let me see. I'm like, it's not done. She's like, it's okay, let me see. And then she's like, that doesn't work, I feel nothing. It's not done. She's like, the music is bad. Mom, it's not done. And like, even now, you know, I realize the way that she approaches things is so from the heart. You know, it's not from an intellectual place. It's, did I feel something or did I not? And so now I'm like, oh, that's what you want from an audience member. You're like, even if I don't get it, am I moved? And so now I'll send her stuff of just like, watch this, I don't want notes, just how did you feel? Like, how, like, I'll send her, especially more scoring, because I think music is just pure emotion. Sometimes I'll send her a piece of score, and I'll be like, how does this make you feel? And she'll be like, it reminds me of the first day of the spring meadow, where the flowers are blooming, and I'm like, it's supposed to be sad. Okay. But, I mean, the movie was interesting because she was so involved in a way, from like the script, you know. It was, she didn't, I didn't really want her to read the script early on, and it wasn't until maybe halfway in the writing process where I realized, oh, this is a mother-son story. It used to be much more Stand By Me, super bad, like just about the friends, no family, and then I was like, oh, I think I want to write about my mom. And, you know, going back to that first short about being I had made a series of shorts in a weird way that for some reason kept exploring like motherhood, and I just was like, why do I keep going and back to, even if it wasn't directly about my mom, it was sort of like inspired by my mom. I shot a movie that was like that was about the village that my mom grew up in Taiwan, and I was just like, everything always traced back to my mom for some reason, and I was just like, oh, I'm like the mom filmmaker, this is so weird. And the script wasn't that, And then in my heart, I was like,
Is it too small?
No, I don't even know. I'm so sorry.
Okay, you have 20 minutes to do Q&A.
Okay, yeah, we should. Okay, I'm gonna cut him off. His mom, amazing. Yeah, we want to open up to you guys. We want to open up to you guys because that's why we make movies. And we'd love to hear any audience questions. I will see a hand if it's really tall. Otherwise, I can't see any.
Thank you for being here. I grew up in the Bay, so very cool to see Dìdi, very special. I'm curious, like watching the movie, it seems like it's both really funny, but also some very serious and intimate moments. How did you think about balancing those tones? And then how did you pick like the picture for the poster, like of Wang Wang running?
Can you
Josh?
repeat the question for the audience a little bit? Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm going to start backwards. So how did you pick the image for the poster? Is one part of the question. The other one was you were from the Bay Area. Sorry,
Oh yeah, how did you balance the humor element with the interpersonal, more serious pieces of the film?
Balancing humor and interpersonal part of the film.
I'm glad you asked about the poster image. Josh, I don't know how severe I can get here, but we love that image. That was like, when we had to pick a still, I was like, I think that's the one. It just speaks to me. It's like irreverent, loud, crass. We submitted it to Sundance as our hero still, and they were like, this is super blurry. Can you pick a different still? And it started a string of emails that laddered all the way to the top, and I was like, what is happening? This is just like but for some reason that image just spoke to me about what adolescent boyhood felt like. It's so just bursting at the seams, and it's loud, and it's just Isaac's giant face. And I remember thinking about, wanting this movie to feel like a big screen movie and being like, his face deserves to be, like a 13-year-old Asian American boy's face deserves to be in movie theaters. Like that story of a 13-year-old Asian American boy in the coming of age canon, like mid-90s, 8th grade, 400 Blows, Stand By Me, Ratcatcher, Water Lilies. I love all those movies. None of them star a kid that looks like him. And I was like, I want people to like see his face. And like that's what that image is, just his giant ass face. But it laddered all the way to the top. And it made me have some serious questions, do some serious soul searching. Had a lot of meetings with our producers being like, listen, it's up to you, but like, da-da-da. And I remember Hanrei, who's our production designer sitting right there, was like, we had to pick a still. And I was like, I don't know, man, am I just being stubborn, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, I love this image. Do you want to play it safe or do you want to take a risk? And I'm like, Hanrei. All right, send the image. But it was a surprisingly big hurdle. But we love it, and now we see it everywhere, and it's like, we made the right choice. And as far as like the moments in the film, I knew I wanted the film to be messy, and I wanted to show the ugly sides of boyhood and culture, and I knew that if we were going to mine the funny and the joy, we had to mine the shame and the anger and the sadness and the loneliness I think that can come with boyhood. And so it was that. It was just trying to, find ways to make it feel honest.
How did you go about like starting the process of trying to fund your first feature?
How did you go about trying to fund your first feature?
Yeah, it was, going back to SFFILM, I got the SFFILM Rainin grant for screenwriting, and by the end of that cycle, I think people, I don't know if, I'm speaking to the choir, but like, when you think of movies and like the writing process and the development process and then production, I felt like by the end of the Rainin grant for screenwriting, I was like, I'm ready to move into the development process. Like, if someone believes in me enough to make this version of the script, I will make it. And it was right around that time that our first producer came on board, Carlos Lopez Estrada, and I had worked with him before, but long story short, I sent him the script, he came on board as a producer, and we went through the traditional agency avenues and sent it to every company we had access to, and everybody passed. Everyone said, oh, we love it, but not for us, or this is actually great, but it's too small for us. And I was like, what? Then give us your leftover money. I don't get it. I just didn't understand how that all worked, and it was the whole time we were creatively working on it too. But it was maybe like a year of no, and then and we were just like finding different ways, and eventually through SFFILM again, we were in the development stage too with Rainan, and through a technology mishap, I got paired with Josh Peters, our producer, in a Zoom room. It was our meet cute. We hit it off. We fell in love, and he just, I sent him the script, and it just felt so organic. And he was like, "Look, I think I can be helpful." And we brought him on as a producer, and he was incredibly helpful. And he, we had momentum, it felt like, but we had no actual money, which is a strange place to be, because it was like, we're making the movie. We have no money. I don't think we're making the movie. And eventually, it just, it felt like people were believing in us, and we just needed to find the money. It was like, we just needed that first drop in the bucket. And in a weird way, Josh called me one day and was like, "Dude, I have good news. We got our first drop in the bucket." And it was a financier that he had worked with in the past, and it wasn't enough to make the movie. But it was just, one person believes in you, it means other people will follow along. And I remember getting on a Zoom right afterwards. A company, Unapologetic Projects, had gotten the script, I think, through CAA or UTA. I remember getting on a Zoom with them, and they loved the script already. And I remember it was an hour and a half Zoom call, and I remember they came in hot with questions. I was like, oh, they're ready. I pitched my ass off. I have never pitched the movie better than I pitched in that Zoom room. And I remember hanging up, and I texted Josh and Carlos and Val, and I was like, I just talked to these financiers. I think they love the movie, or they never want to speak to me ever again. The next day we got an email from them, and it was like, "We love Sean, we love the movie, we want to co-finance the movie." And I was like, what? And we were like, wait, who are these guys? But we did our due diligence, and all of a sudden the movie became real. All of a sudden, this arbitrary date that we set, there was like, I guess we're trying to aim for that, we have no money. All of a sudden, we had 70% of our financing, and then we just, in a way, got to pick the people we wanted to collaborate with for the last chunk. And so, to Josh's point, there was like a blind tenacity, and being like, it'll just keep the ball moving, it'll hopefully happen. But we set a date, and we were just like, hopefully just keep knocking on the doors, and someone will bite.
I was also very touched by the evolution of the sibling relationship between Chris and Megan. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about like what inspired that, or if any of that is personal.
For those that didn't hear it, she was touched by the sibling relationship in the film, and we're going to elaborate on it.
Yeah, I mean, I have an older sister. She's 4.5 years older than me. It was very contentious growing up, but it was also a lot of love, and I think that was something I wanted to try to capture with their relationship in the movie. Was sometimes there's love in fighting, like they don't have the vocabulary to be vulnerable with one another, and in a way, their idea of love is just throwing insults back and forth, and then realizing one day, like, oh, we're going to leave. This version of our relationship is not sustainable. And then they, ultimately in the movie, they make the decision to, they're not like, I love you, you're my brother. But they, try to take the steps to have a healthy relationship.
Okay. I'm very curious about your short, because that was my top. I wanted you to win so bad. So I'm working on my first short for the first time, and I'm wondering, like, what was your role in that? Like, did you do everything? Like, and like, what was the timeline of your short too?
For the grandma short?
Yeah.
I did a lot, but it was like, it was very small, and I don't know that this is normal for shorts, maybe it is, but we shot it, and then I was just doing I was writing the script, I was doing commercial work, and on weekends, and whenever I had free time, I would just open the timeline and be like, what's here? what is this thing, and tried to figure it out. So it was sort of on and off over the course of 2 years. We shot it in 2021 and premiered at South by in 2023. So, which is a long time, but maybe it's normal just because with shorts you have no infrastructure. No one's paying you to do it. You're really, in a way, paying yourself because the time you spend working on it, you're not doing work that you could be getting paid for. But I mean, Dìdi was the complete opposite. I think we were able to finish it in the time we had because we had a whole infrastructure. It was people's full-time jobs for X amount of months, and so. But yeah, sometimes I think that's the thing with shorts is that you just don't have the resources, and you're like, well, no one's gonna spend as many hours on this than I am, so I'm gonna edit it because I can spend 2 years of my life just working on this and not drive myself crazy.
I was wondering, when you were developing the script for Dìdi, did you always have the idea that we would never see the father in the family of the story?
Yeah, I mean, I got this great note from, yes, but I had one note that we got early on that was really, really helpful was, oh God, what was it? Josh, what was it?
It was something to the effect, I'm going to butcher it, but it was something to the effect of you need to establish his presence and the notification of his absence.
Oh yeah, you need to establish his presence in order to feel his absence. And so we treated the character almost like a phantom. He's like a phantom in the movie, but early on we didn't establish his presence at all, so it was just oh, where's Dad? And that was something we kind of really honed in on. Can I ask a question to Ray?
You can. No.
No?
No, you can.
So it sounds like New York inspired a lot of your work. Do you feel like, had you been in the Bay Area, do you feel like you would have been able to come up with the same content? And if not, what are the differences of, how does New York help you more than being in the Bay Area?
Well, I mean, we talked a little bit about this, but the Bay Area will be with me no matter where I am. It's both a place, but it's a perspective, the people I grew up with, going back to that idea of your voice. I realized going back to what your voice is, because that's advice you get a lot as a young filmmaker. People are like, you gotta find your voice. And I would be so inspired, and then I would go back and be like, how do I do that? And I realized maybe just in the last year and a half that yeah, your voice is no more complicated than the things that you and your friends laugh about, the things that scare you, the things that make you feel anxious, the things that make you cry, the things that keep you up at night, the things that really make you stir as a human being. That's what your voice is. It's not and I think maybe this is gonna sound a little pretentious, but I realized, oh, you don't find your voice as much as you clear the noise and let your voice kind of come out and listen, because I think, what New York really did for me, me ending up there, was I moved to LA and I never knew a single other filmmaker in my life, and all of a sudden I was talking about films, only hanging out with filmmakers in this city that was all about film, and I was like, this is kind of suffocating. I don't know that I'm as inspired here now because now I'm searching elsewhere. I just wanted things to be good. I didn't know that and I stopped trying to express myself, And what I actually wanted to ask Ray was, I'm curious when fear came into your process, because I remember talking to my friends recently and Spike. I got to meet Spike, and we talked a lot about when I was making those skate videos growing up, I was fearless. It was because there was no stakes in a way, and it was all play. And now, every time I make something, I feel like I'm always terrified, but in a good way. It's motivating, but there is always fear involved with something that I care about. When I moved to New York, all these things that I thought I wanted, I didn't want. I was like, oh, my friends are getting internships at Annapurna. That's a cool company. I gotta go work at this. And I was like, I don't want any of that. I want to make stuff. How do I put myself in a position where I can make enough money to make stuff, or just get paid to make stuff? I don't know. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to make stuff. And I think being away from the industry and also being young enough, like so young, and I didn't know anything, I was like, okay, all these things my friends are doing, and I actually don't want that. And I think that's what New York really helped me focus on, was just kind of like having the space away from the noise of the industry to let my voice kind of come out.
I'm getting the eyes. We got to wrap up here, but I do want to ask one thing. If you can leave the audience with one, not theoretical, one practical thing for the filmmakers out there, one practical thing they can do to move their project along, whether it's short or feature, what would you want to leave them with?
Well, who here is working on their first feature, trying to get it off the ground? Okay, and who here is just making shorts and are filmmakers? Okay.
You can raise them up. That's how you get seen. Right? Yeah, these guys over here, that's not how you make movies. I'll just tell you, you gotta be that guy or girl. You gotta be this person, because this doesn't work. That's my only advice, okay? I used to be this.
Advice.
I used to do this, okay? No one sees you. Just raise your hand. I met my wife on the air train, 3 minutes. You miss your opportunity.
That's better advice than I could ever give. Yeah, I guess raise your hand, you know. I would say think small, you know, think local, and think about the people around you, and look at the people around you in your life, like the stories about, like my grandma's, for example, you know, like the people around you are the people you want to make movies for, are the people you want to make movies with, and like the conversations you have with the people 1 degree of separation from you, those are microcosms of national conversations that are always happening. Like those very, very specific things that you and your friends talk about, they are themes, and there's so much there to mine. You don't always have to go and look for the next big New York Times headline and adapt that. There's something that's so intimate and right next to you that you can turn into something really poignant.
Amazing. Well, give it up for Sean.
For being here. Thank you for being such a wonderful audience. I'm sorry, I'm now the traffic cop. We have an event starting in here now, so we're going to gently ask everyone, go see a movie. Go outside, get some fresh air. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Ray.
All right, thank you, Anne.
Let's take this.
Yes.